So now we are online. It's working beautifully. Okay, so today's topic is on pleasure. So it would be nice to see. I think Lama wanted it, so I'm just trying to do that. Why do we go behind pleasure? That's the question. And why there is sense gratification. Okay, so now today topic will be a very simple. I'll give as many examples as I could do that from our usual life, um, what we generally do, and then that will help us to understand on three things. One is asada, which is the sensual pleasure, the pleasure what we get, and then we get adinava, so there is a danger. Then Nissarana is escape. So there are three things. Before we get into those three things, you need to know how the objects come to be. So when we say we have Pathavi Dhatu, Apo Dhatu, Tejo Dhatu, Vayu Dhatu, all these dhatus, what we call a quality of the, let's say, the physical qualities, which we can see in this body, which we have been referring to. So I have these hands and eyes and face and all that. So if I really look at this body of the four elements and of all of you, it shows a shape and a color, it shows a size, it shows the texture, and then there is something which needs to be possessed. So every object in the sense the living and non-living, both taken together, goes through five as a cycle. The first cycle is Udayangama, that is, there is an arising. It arises because there is a condition that can make it arise. Okay, so there is always an arising. So when I say arising, is just like sun arising. So there is a sunrise. So we call it sunrise. The sun has risen. Actually, no sun will rise. It's circling. But when we see from the horizon, there is a rising. In the same way, whether it's a human or an animal or a deva or a brahma or plants or animals, birds, insects, everything, if we really see, what we can observe through our mechanism is that it arises. So how does it arise? It arises due to the bija, which is the seed. So we know humans have sperms, then animals also have sperms, and then there are instantaneous births, which is the Devaloka and the Brahmaloka, and there are animal realms, and there are birds, and there are insects which come out of egg, and there are some things which come out of moisture. Some of the beings come out of land, and some of the beings come out of water, which we can see. So there is Udayangama, which happens due to the condition matching enough to say that the beings can come. Okay. 1 minute. This is again causing a problem. Okay. So when the beings come, there is Udayangama, there is an arising. Atthangama, that is, there is development. So when we see that there is always development of this or that. So when we can observe, we observe that there is a development. So the body is getting developed. And every place, be it plants, be it animals, be it birds, be it insects, whatever we are seeing is developing. So there is a development. Then there is something called as maturity. That is asada. That is the topic for today. That we are behind that asada, which is development. So when the child is small, nobody really watches the child except that there is cuddling and loving it and all that. There is no sexual interest in the child when we look at it. But when the child grows into an adult and looks different now, the same child, but now looks different. So when it looks different, the person, the opposite sex, what we call, if there's a girl, the boy likes to be with the girl, and if it is a girl, like boy and a girl, so it's always, and also in the animals, there would be mating season, and everywhere the same. The birds, insects, everything goes through their mating cycle, and humans are no exception to it. So the humans also go through the mating cycle, and that mating cycle is actually what asada is all about. That is maturity. So it is matured. Now that maturity doesn't stay for long. It starts to fade away. So that we call it as an aging. So there's an aging from there. So we say middle age. So from adult life, we can't remain as adult forever. Whereas the other realms like Deva, they are always adult. So they don't go lower, they don't go higher. They stay where they are staying. So basically, that is the reason we also like to look at 25 or 24 or whatever that age is, and we would like to stick on to that age. We don't want to age beyond what we can think of. And then we know as we age, the body cannot sustain, and we know that it's going to be painful. And because we understand the pain, every one of us understand the pain. So we want to escape from that pain and torture, which really comes with aging. And nobody likes to age. If you were to ask anyone, he or she wouldn't like to age. So that is behind asada, the pleasure of being young and handsome or beautiful is the one what we are seeking. But then very soon it will turn into adinava. Adinava means which causes collapsing, which is danger basically. So as our body starts to collapse, the body pain starts, and what was working will stop working. So the organs are aged, so it cannot hold that, or it cannot take that pressure of the body. Same thing happens with animals also. If you have pet dogs and cats and cow or horse or whatever it is, you can see the same happening. Same thing with the plant. They are no different. So they also go through the same cycle of existence. So they get into one second. So they actually get into trouble by being having to age. So I have a friend, and then their home they had a Labrador dog. So what I was hearing from him is that this dog is 13 and a half year old, and then it is having severe arthritis, and it is in the dying ages, and it is suffering. So what these people have decided is to give an injection so that it will at least die peacefully. So the veterinary doctor, I think few days ago, he would have culled the dog or killed the dog, because it's not able to really tolerate the pain, and there is no way that pain can be relieved. So we all know the body pain. We have seen people with cancer, we've seen people with numerous kind of diseases. So that means we don't want adinava. because with Adinava comes the last stage, which is Nissarana. Nissarana means going off. Okay, so everything goes through these 5 cycles. Udayangama, Attangama, Asada, Adinava, Nissarana. What Buddha has done is that he has taken the 3 main things as a theme. The theme here is that we want to stay young, we want to stay productive. We don't want to become non-productive. That means we don't want to get into a stage where walking is difficult, talking is difficult, getting up is difficult and all that. So we don't want that to happen at any point in time. So we don't want any diseases to come and haunt us. But the natural tendency is to get into the Adinava. So now, before the body ends into a baggage, there is an escape, Nissarana. So this path is also called as Arya Nissaraneya Magga, meaning which can cut the cycle and remove you from the asada, and then you are escaping Nissarana. So this is a brief I would like to start with before we go detailed into why do we search for pleasure. Any questions from anyone on this subject, especially what I've covered on the 5 states, which every being, including a tree to a stone to whatever we find, living and non-living, goes through the same cycle. Except that the non-living doesn't know that it is non-living. Other than that, the living knows that there is pain in this cycle. So we actually know the pain. So anyone, any question, or I can move on, but this is such an important topic, I thought it is better that we can discuss. Okay, nothing, fine, I'll carry on. Okay, good. So why do we do the things the way we do it? So there are 5 things which makes something out of nothing. So what are these 5 things which makes us to do something out of nothing is what we are going to cover right now. The first thing is that we want, that is when we are looking at asada, pleasure, the pleasure comes from the sight. Why the pleasure comes from the sight? Because the pleasure comes from the sight because sight is something which we can modify the way we want it. What does that really mean? If I don't like something, I can go out and see something else. Let's say I'm at somebody's home and I'm not liking it. What I can do is that I can take my mobile and then start seeing something or reading something or doing something. So there is always a way for every being, every human being basically, to do something through the 5 senses by changing the originally what is coming there to the eye, because we want to enjoy. And when we get that pleasure, that is when we get what object we are getting, and that is the pleasure. So let's say in India today, we have 4 states, they have gone for election, or 5 states have gone for election. So they have elected their own people who will be ruling. This is an assembly election, so the election had happened. So today the counting has happened, the votes have been counted, and then the winner is named. That person who is a winner right now is celebrating, and that person who is not a winner is not able to celebrate. So we will take the thing presently, who is celebrating. There is a pleasure. So there is a seeking of pleasure because it is working out. in the way I wanted it to work out, or that person wanted to work out, so it is working. So the entire parties who were contesting for the election are now so happy of celebration, because this is something that can be celebrated, because all their hard earned efforts have given the proper fruit, which earlier had not given, or earlier given or not given, their effort has paid off. So this effort putting is the pain. So the dukkha is something which is not seen at all. In the pleasure seeking, we normally see the dukkha, do not see the dukkha, or the pain we are going to take to achieve something. See, now their pain, and both the parties, that is the opposition and the ruling, are two human beings only. There is no party there. Okay? That is the nama and rupa in the first place. Now on top of that, they both are what we can say, they both are challenging themselves, and they both are competing for a seat. It's just to sit, but the decision making, everything can happen. So basically, both the parties, or as many parties as there are, those many parties have put in their effort, which is the pain. So they have taken pain to win the election. Whether it's a single person who stood for the election, or a group of people who have stood for an election, or a party has stood for an election, it's made out of people only anyway. So they all have somehow come together to enjoy the pleasure of winning, and taken the pain. And that pain is not shown, because asada makes the pain not to be seen. So when we say growing pain, what we are trying to say is that body goes through a lot of transformation. So you have to study, you have to, one side is to way to make money, another side is body is growing. So from a child to coming to the adult age, by which time the person has studied or has got educated on what he or she should be doing as a career. So the career focus would have already happened. So the person feels that I have taken all these certificates, so now I can be happy. So that happiness, that pursuit of happiness to get something, is what is called as pleasure seeking. So from sight, from sound, from taste, touch, smell, 5 of these senses, I would love to have the one I intend to have. And that intention is coming from the mind, which is the 6th sense base by itself. So this is how the pleasure seeking exercise begins, which is called as asada. So now we keep on searching that, either in the sight, or in the sound, or in the taste, or in the touch, or in the smell. And whenever we get it, however we get it, so we put in enough effort to get it by conceptualization that there is something that needs to be enjoyed. And when that enjoyment comes, there is a celebration, because we have done, we have got that for which I am struggling. I am putting my whole heart to get it. So it can be election, it can be getting a university topper, or getting a Nobel Prize, or getting some award, getting some recognitions, or getting a job, getting whatever we are getting, is part of this pleasure seeking. It gives us pleasure. Certainly, all senses gives pleasure. There is no hide and seek that none of the senses give pleasure. It will be wrong to say that it will not give pleasure. It does give pleasure. Now, question comes, can I persist on the pleasure? Yes, I can persist on the pleasure. So the basic aim is of all beings, including animals, is to keep on seeking pleasure in this or that, because it becomes boredom, meaning to say that it becomes stale. So pleasure seeking is something which will not make something stale, it will make something fresh. So I had a pleasure of watching some football game or some other game, and now I can't see the same thing again. I can really now see some other game which makes more sense. It can be cricket or it can be some other, but you can't ask me to keep on watching the same game, because I wouldn't like that the same. Same thing, I can't be watching the same movie all the time. I cannot watch or eat the same food stuff all the time. So if somebody were to give me the same porridge all the days, from morning to afternoon to the evening, again morning, afternoon, evening, and after a few days I get bored of eating porridge. I need something else. So that something else is the pleasure. So in every activity, a human being can try to find pleasure and seek pleasure as the only refuge for happiness. Okay, so this is the reason we have something called as sense gratification. What is there to gratify is to make them pacified, make them happy. So if the senses are happy, I am happy, basically. So through the senses, I pick up the impulses, and with the impulses, I will try to modify what I want from that and take it. And take it in the sense that I extract. So when I extract it, it becomes mine. So let's take another example. Indian rupees versus dollars. Which is better? Obviously dollars, because the number is higher. So if I am an American, I would feel very happy now. Or if I am in America, I feel very happy because I am having pleasure of being in America, because the currency I can double, almost double, let's say, if I were to return back to India. So the same dollar is giving me more number of Indian notes. 1 second. So it can give me the same amount of number of currency notes, more than what I could have earned on the other side. Meaning, if I had been in India, the number of notes would be lesser. When I work in America, the number of notes are going to increase because of the exchange value. So there's a pleasure of being in America. So why am I struggling in America? Because it pays me more. So whatever pays me more, I need to be there. Whatever pays me less, I don't have to be there. So we change companies because there is many things, what we can say, the money is good, the work is more or less challenging. So it really helps me. It really helps me to earn as much as I can. So the whole idea of asada is to extract. So a person or an object becomes an extractor for the other person as long as it is working out. Meaning, for an employer, as long as he is able to make the profit, he would keep that employee. If the organization is not able to make profit, that person is asked to leave because there is no profit of keeping this person. So for that reason, I need to have an appraisal, and then when I appraise, and then I tell that person that, look, our objective is this, our goal is this, and you are not really focused on that goal, so we have to let go of you because you don't seem to be matching with what we are looking at. Your skill is good, but presently that skill is not what we require. We require somebody of this kind because there is no pleasure now. It is pressure which has come rather than the pleasure. So basically, when we start looking at enjoying pleasure, there is a pressure which comes in to get that pleasure. So we put in sufficient amount of effort in whatever we do to get that pleasure out. And the senses for that time get pacified. And again it starts. And again the mind goes in continuous motion to get that pleasure to itself and through the five senses. And this activity of doing it all the time is called as sense gratification. That means we would like to gratify the senses to enjoy. So the relief here from the anxiety of the senses is that if it works, there is a relief. If it is not worked, then there is pain. So managing senses is the most painful thing. So when we say watch the pain, what really it means is that watch the pain of the five senses. In managing the show, each one will act differently, and you need to really work out hard to make the senses work the way you want it to work. Otherwise, they will work the way they want to work. And that is a constant tussle between what you think you should be doing as consciousness, which is vijnana, and what the mind and the senses are going to do, which is the instrument. They don't have life by itself. So, adhinava, the next one. When we say adhinava, what it really means? It means the danger, the dissolution which is happening. That means once the senses have gratified itself, it's losing shape. So the next new sensual material would come and then they occupy what was once occupied by something else. So in search of keeping it, there are fights, there are arguments, there are different kind of ways of working, and then countries go for war. From that to organization acquiring another organization, losing job and losing prestige and losing this or that and making more money and all of that, and shares or trading or whatever it is. It's all part of seeking the pleasure and losing it, which is adhinava. So if we see that the basic aim of human being and the devas and all of that is to ensure that they don't suffer, they don't get into hatredness, they don't get into the lust. However, because of seeking pleasures, they get caught up in that. This is what we had studied when we took into the Sakkapanha, the questions by Sakka or the Indra, wherein he asked questions to the Buddha on why do the devas and the asuras and the Gandharva and the humans, they knowing very well that there is no need for them to do bad deeds which take them to a bad destination, still tend to like to do that. And we went through those 4 answers given by Buddha, but bringing out from the asada, that's main thing is asada. That is, every being would like to enjoy the senses appearing with the sense objects, and that becomes adhinava. And once it becomes an adhinava, it causes lot of disturbances. So all the today's world, or even earlier, if we take today's world, the wars, the idea of engaging in taking over a country or taking over this or that, it's all the same. Whether the country is taken over or the company is taken over by another company or whatever it is, it really doesn't matter. It's the whole objective is only that, to do something in such a way that that country or that place or that company or is removed from competition, so that I only survive, nobody else needs to survive. That's the objective of any person or any group of people who believe in getting into asada. And we all believe in asada, meaning we all believe in sensual enjoyment. So when we see the senses, we become individual. So when we become individual, it's already divided. So once it is divided, there is nothing else anybody can do to further divide. So we keep on dividing things in search of that pleasure which is only meant for me. And that is how the stinginess starts. And this stinginess also creates the need of jealousy, because that if I am not jealous of someone, then my senses will become totally contented. And because I don't want to be contented, because I need that pleasure all the time, if some other person gets that pleasure, I feel jealous about it. So Adhinava is ultimately somebody will take it away from me because he cannot stand it. So let's say I get a promotion and my other colleague doesn't like it because he feels that he is more, what we can say, eligible for the promotion than me. So there is always this debate, why he has come and why I couldn't get it. So when we have such a kind of thinking, which automatically comes because of asada, nobody wants to lose anything. They want to gain, but ultimately it goes away. So basically, Buddha says that there are 5 causes for asada, and there are equal number of causes for adhinava. So every pleasure seeking has pain in seeking it and retaining it, which cannot be retained at any point in time. So we cannot, no matter what we do on the pleasure. So what then happens here is that we keep on losing that pleasure. Now what do we do in that case? Then we have to go and look into the Nissarana. So when we get into the Nissarana, what is the way of Nissarana? So how do I do that? The only way I can really do that. 1 second. The only way I can do it by removing Chandaraga. So Kameshu Chandaraga, that, and Chandaraga Pahanam, that is giving up the desire and greed for sensual pleasure. That is how we can practice. So how do we do it? How do we do the Chandaraga? So the first thing about Chandaraga is to know that what is Chanda and what is Raga. These are the 2 key terms. So Chanda is fondness and Raga is deep desire for getting what I need to get, because I want to get something out of it. So if I am able to remove that, meaning working out on the drawback. What's the drawback? Is that it's going to go away. And that's the drawback. So if I were to have an apple or a food or something, I know once I put in the mouth, the taste goes away. Like that, if I'm able to see in everything, the sight goes away, the sound goes away by itself, the taste goes away by itself, and then the touch goes away by itself. And if I'm able to look into all the five senses, automatically the Chandaraga goes away. And with the Chandaraga reducing, what happens is that attachment to that keeps on reducing, because the mind is now able to see the damage. So Chandaraga Vinayo, that means Vinayo means the discipline. So putting a discipline to that, and Chandaraga Pahanam is to cutting it off. So when we truly understand what is a sensual pleasure, and we truly understand what is the adhinava of that sensual pleasure, which is going to cause a deadly pain to anyone who indulges into it, because you ultimately lose it in one way or the other. So somebody either steals it, or somebody takes it from you by force, or somebody kills somebody to have the same item which he believes that he or she should be having it. And this we can really see it in action when we see the property disputes which happens between the siblings in whichever part of the world. And we can also see the number of divorces which happen between the couples, and then they again get married and again they go for divorce. That clearly shows the adhinava. That is, you ultimately don't get the pleasure which was got on the first time. So if I'm having coffee, for first time when I had coffee, the pleasure what I got of coffee, no matter how many times I drink that coffee, I don't seem to get that pleasure again. And because I don't get that pleasure again, it becomes very difficult to retain it. And now I crave for that. I want that taste back because it was such a nice taste. And that is how I get into this kama chanda, in enjoying that thing which shouldn't be enjoyed, and I start putting in more effort to have that, not realizing the adhinava, the danger. The danger is that I need to so much pursue that it will create a situation for all kind of immoral deeds that comes up with it, because I'm not seeing the actual danger which is happening in the way I'm trying to see things. And the Nissarana is to see this drawback. That's all what it is. So when we actually see the drawback, we see that we are putting, to get that pleasure, we are putting so much of pain. Like yesterday we were looking at no pain, no gain. Like that we are then putting so much of effort to get it, which is not worth it. So when we give it up, when it shows up that it's not worth the pain to take, no matter how many coffees I can have, how many sodas I can have, how many relationships I can have, or whatever it is, it doesn't last, no matter what I do. So when I see that, and all the fights and all the arguments, all the discussions, all kind of things which happen is because of that kind of not able to see the adhinava. So when I see the adhinava, which is nothing but the danger, then mind automatically gives up. So when the mind gives up that, the first jhana is enjoyed, which is far better than any of the sensual pleasure. So the savitakka savichara piti sukha ekagata, that is, savitakka means something on the Dhamma. Savichara is the first is to debate on the Dhamma, and the second one is to think on the Dhamma, which then gives you the pleasure of knowing the Dhamma. And when you know the pleasure of Dhamma, you will not miss it even for a moment. So then you get sukha, because it is not now conditioned. It is not conditioned by the senses. So when it's not conditioned by the senses, you genuinely enjoy it without the need of the sensual uh, touch or sight or sound and all that. So irrespective of it, you can be happy. And then you get into sukha, which is real pleasure. And then you get into ekagata, equanimity. In equanimity, you are far better because the condition itself is removed. So now you have done Nissarana, that is, you have escaped. So once we get into the first jhana, the second and the third and the fourth jhana will take us to the upekha, which is equanimity. So this is how we can come out of the sensual pleasure through the jhanic bliss. So there are two kinds of jhanic bliss we can get. One with vipassana, which is investigating the Dhamma. Another one is samatha, wherein you make the mind tranquil. And both of them lead to the same direction. The only difference here is that in samatha, we are going to make the mind stop moving and then start investigating. In the vipassana, we start investigating so that we can understand the Dhamma and get the pleasure of Dhamma, which is going to bring in the enjoyment far better than any other sensual touch or taste or smell or thoughts or anything that comes. So the reason why we are behind senses is because it gives us pleasure and we want to get it the way we want to get it. But when we see the adhinava, which is the defects or the danger, one can work out on the Nissarana. So that's all I had on this subject. Anyone would like to discuss or question? So these are the things, and that all these three takes, that means the Nissarana, when we start looking at the adhinava, which is the defects, then it starts us to take into dukkha, because that's when the dukkha is penetrated, the first noble truth. And once the first noble truth is penetrated, we get into the second noble truth, which talks about why do we do something which shouldn't be done. So it will help us to look at why do we crave, and we see that the craving is for the sensual pleasure. There is a desire to enjoy that again and again, because that's the only thing we know. We don't know anything about the jhanic bliss, what we can get, which is far better than any of the sensual. So once we can see this defect and the dukkha is seen and penetrated, it helps us to get into the anicca on one side and again anatta on the other side. So then we are in nibbana. Either with anicca we get into nibbana, or with anatta we get into nibbana, because we have penetrated into the dukkha satcha. So the basic idea is to see the defect in the senses. And when we see the defect in the senses, we immediately get to see the dukkha. Now, I'll explain what it really means. Is that without pain, you cannot get anything at all. From morning till night, if you really check, we are putting effort to retain something which itself is a pain. If you leave it, it's going to break. So you have to put in effort to keep it in a particular order. So even if you go by science, so there is this law of thermodynamics. It's a beautiful law which exactly replicates Dhamma. So we take the first law of thermodynamics. So what does it say? Matter cannot be created nor destroyed, and energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So if we take this statement, what are we trying to do? We are trying to create matter, and we are trying to use up energy. And both are not possible. You can change the shape from one to another. That is possible. But I cannot create something from something there. That is not possible. This is the first law. Then we come to the second interesting law there. There are two terms called as entropy and enthalpy. So entropy is a natural progression from heat to becoming cold. And enthalpy is to put effort to make that stay, that heat stay. So the atoms are dissipating, so you have to put in effort to make that come together. We are exactly doing that in getting that pleasure. There is no pleasure in the sense, but however, there is something we think as a pleasure. So to maintain that, you have to put the pain. So now I have relationship. I need to be working out on my relationship all the time. All the time. There's not even once I cannot say that I will not be working on the relationship. I have to work on the relationship. If I'm working on a job, then I need to again maintain the relationship. That means I need to maintain the relationship with my boss, with the product, and with this and with that, with market, with all of that. And then only it is possible. Otherwise, it is not possible at all. So in anything we do from morning till night, if you really see, we put in enough pain to make things work. And if it works, meaning for the effort what we put, if it is working, then we have the pleasure. Then we enjoy the pleasure. We feel very happy. Let's say I'm taken my car and I'm driving and I want to go to a particular place, and then I'm able to go there without any hurdles on the path. And then the photography is coming out very well, and the clouds are not there, and the sky is clear, and it's not too cold, it's not too hot, and it is perfect weather condition, and everything is working out good for me. In that case only I can enjoy that moment. There's no other way out of it. That means if my effort, it can be anything, if my effort pays off, then I am enjoying the pleasure. So every sense, that is sight, sound, taste, touch, smell, if I am taking it, every sense should be working in that way. It should be so much orchestrated that then the mind feels pleasure. There is a defect there. It cannot retain it. After some time, the same pleasure starts giving pain, because it becomes stale. So relationships become stale. Then the events become stale. Then the locations become stale. Then the job becomes stale. Then the food becomes stale. So everything becomes stale. So what do? We search new things, because that has become stale. Not able to see the defect, we pursue that in the name of happiness, but there is no happiness there. So, but if you are able to see clearly that the pain we are taking is of no real use, then what happens? Then you know that there is a gap between what the senses are aspiring and what you can get. So you will immediately, if you are looking at the Dhamma, you will, if you were to understand this dukkha, which is the pain you're taking, and just observe what is that I'm doing. I'm just putting pain after the pain. I'm taking pain after the pain. So why is that I'm doing it? If I were to observe, then it releases the very condition, because relief from pain equals pleasure. What if I don't expect anything out of that senses? It's just a sense. It doesn't do anything other than the sight coming into it, or the sound coming into it, the taste coming into it, when the food is there, when the smell comes. It's automatic. It's not I'm doing something about it. what if I'm able to do that? The very moment when we do that, you have escaped. And immediately it drops. So the Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankhara Vijnana is one way of looking at it, which is anicca. And another way of looking at it is that you have the five senses and the sixth sense, mano, with its Dhamma, it also breaks down. So once it breaks down, you get anatta. That is, you'll see that it is the consciousness which was bringing these two together, but by its own nature, it doesn't do anything. So this defect, looking at this defect, you can escape. You can give up. And that is when we get the seven. That is, you first get nibbida, a sense of weight going away. So it becomes nibbidaya. Then viragaya, because viraga means to literally, that is the first one is disillusionment, nibbida. Viraga means you become dispassionate. Why do I become dispassionate? For the very reason that I've seen the pain I'm taking to retain something which cannot be retained. For the very reason of that, not because of anything else. I'm able to see the defect there. That without the condition, nothing I can enjoy there. So if the condition is not matching, I'm putting all my effort to match the conditions. And when I match the condition, there is always a possibility of defect coming into it. And when the defect comes into it, then I don't know whom to blame. So then I have to say that, oh, I should have planned my vacation at that time, or I should have done this at this time. I think I should have spoken very well at that time. So I'm putting all kind of conditions back because I need that pleasure. If everything is worked out as a condition, not by luck or whatever, it's the condition. That the condition matches. The moment condition matches, immediately the pleasure is extracted. So the sight which I want has been got. So I'm feeling very happy. Wow, this is the one I wanted. The sound what I'm hearing are superb. This is exactly the sound. This is exactly the taste what I was looking at. But it goes away. The moment it goes away, I need it again. It's like the drug. I need it. And that's the craving. So craving is the root cause for suffering. So if I stop craving, the pain is gone. And craving for what? The six senses, that's all. So why do we desire, or what do we desire, is to be happy. First thing, of all of us. And we think happiness comes through the senses, and hence we go pursuing the sensual gratification. Only if we know that the senses cannot by itself do anything, it's condition based and it's defect prone, meaning all fights, all arguments, all debates, all discussions, everything that happens is on the senses perception and the feeling, what one gets out of the senses. So there is, from the six senses, you have feeling, you have perception, and you do some action, which is really intentional action to make that real, to have it. And when you have it, you don't want to lose it. Because I put in so much of effort. It's not an easy thing to give up. And somebody says that, why don't you give it to me? I say that I have gone crazy. You know how much I have worked for it. So because of that, because of the very thing, I become stingy. And when I become stingy and somebody gets it, I'm even more upset. Because that person has not worked and he got it and I couldn't get it. So that makes it even more worse situation for me. So now I can get into all kind of immoral way of looking at things because I need it. So I become a drug addict on senses. So what if I were to give up? just give up, just drop. Then what happens? I no longer suffer. Because I no longer suffer, meaning I no longer have the pain of holding on to it. 1 second. Yeah, somebody has been calling. Okay. Okay. So now come back. So when we really look at this drawback, what we are getting, then it automatically helps us to relieve from the suffering. And then we are done. So condition has been removed. So that condition removal is Nibbana.
I'm sorry, what was the last thing you said? Yeah, that last thing you said?
The last thing I said is that when we remove the condition, it becomes Nibbana. That is, there is no holding on, there is no bonding. Nibbana is from two words, Ni plus Bana. So Bana means is to be bound. Ni is to cut that. So it's unbound. So you're no longer bound by anything. So why do we desire? Is because of happiness. What do we desire is to have sensual gratification. And then we go behind it. And if we were to know the defect and we work out with the jhanas or with the absorption, the samadhi, then what happens is that the very sensual attachment goes away. Because this is even more better than just having a sensual excitement. And because of that, it's unbound, because it's not dependent on the sensual stimulus. It's no longer on the sensual stimulus. It doesn't really matter what is coming in front of me. And hence Nibbana. So you will get to see, once we get to see the pain we are taking, we get to see the other two sides, which is anicca on one side and the anatta on the other side.
I asked this on YouTube, and I jumped back in to ask it directly.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
It is, you hear this from psychologists, that there's a baseline of sense pleasure that must be experienced for our psychological well-being as biological beings. That is like sexual release or exercise, food, rest, reaching goals.
Yes.
I mean, is there a balance there, or do those things need to be relinquished?
No, actually, there are two things. It's a good question. Now, there is certainly sensual pleasure. Certainly. But the pursuit to keep it established all the time is not possible. So that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be exercising. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't have the sexual relationships, or we shouldn't be having our house in order. All that is supposed to be there, including the job, what we are doing, because that is very much required. Very much required. But there is a limitation to that. So when we look at psychology, human psychology, is that why do we do certain things the way we want to do it? It's because we want to be happy, as simple as that. That doesn't mean that the senses don't provide happiness at all, it only gives sadness. No. But it doesn't retain there. You lose it. Just like I have a cup of coffee, and another cup of coffee. Somebody gives me another cup of coffee, saying that, why don't you have this coffee again? And I would not like it. Absolutely, I would feel not that excited, the second cup of coffee. And let us say I had a second cup of coffee, and then the third cup of coffee at the same time. I wouldn't want it. So, the basic problem, what we are trying to address, is not on the senses. It's the pursuit behind senses all the time. So, if we are in moderation, it shouldn't really matter, because we know, or you will know, or I will know, that there is a limitation and there is a danger, because all the fights, all the quarrel, all the debates, all the discussions, everything what happens is around what is perceived and what is felt. Each person feels and each person perceives in a very different way. So we see the defect there. So instead of getting argumentative with someone, what I would do is I would see from his point of view, and I know that he is either talking about the sight, what he's seeing, or the sound, or the taste, or touch and smell, and thoughts, which he believes is true or she believes is true. So there is a limitation to that. So the moment I see that limitation, it makes things easier. So I don't react to it. I will respond to the way it has to be responded. That is, say, since I am also going to the office, I am also working, there are a lot of challenges. But what about Buddha Dhamma and what about without Buddha Dhamma? Is it without Buddha Dhamma, I don't even know what to react, or how to react, how to address the issue or address the challenges. Now with this, I can really address the challenges easily, because I can see the pain that person is taking to prove certain things. So for me to prove it, again I have to put that pain. So we both are taking pain only. There's no pleasure. Only if he wins, he feels relief from that pain, which is pleasure. And if I win that argument, then I know that somebody was arm twisting me, and now I'm feeling, wow, it's good. Now I'm no longer being arm twisted. So to answer your question is that yes, there is, but limitation is there. You cannot get it all the time, even though we are pursuing that. And that's the dukkha actually. See, if it was free flowing all the time, we wouldn't have really be suffering actually. Meaning, if I were to get the sight of what I'm liking to see all the time, there won't have any problem at all. If the sound were to be the way I want the sound to be, you won't have any problem at all. See, I was also talking while I think you were away. I was saying that since I'm in India or the Southeast Asian countries, a lot of people go to West. Now, why do they go to West? There are only two reasons for that. One is you can make more money than what you would have done in India, or in Sri Lanka, or in Burma, or in Pakistan, or in Bangladesh, or wherever it is, or in Afghanistan, or wherever. Why? He multiplies it. It's a currency is a currency. It really does not matter how much he's earning. But the moment I convert the currency, what happens? There's a pleasure. So I don't mind taking the pain of coming to America, working there, getting an H-1B visa, and all the pain I'm ready to take it for a few dollars more. Why? Because I can multiply and see, and somebody has told me that working in America, being an American, it's a number one country, let's say. So that sticks on to me. So isn't there a pleasure there? There is. But is it true? Is it really true? No. There are people who are suffering in America. But I don't see that. Right? Because I have got hooked onto that drug, that I need to be in America at any cost, just like the Mexican do. They try their best to cross the border. Either they bribe, or they jump up, or jump the gate, they get killed, or whatever. They don't mind taking that. Why? It's a pursuit of happiness. Even though Mexico has money, but he feels, if I were to jump onto the California side, I could somehow make something work. And isn't that the foolishness? But that's what senses will do. He's sensing it. He's sensing that it makes more sense to be there rather than not being there. Did I answer your question, Lama?
Yes. And I mean, yes, it also brings to mind the necessity to actually legitimately experience the jhanas. And I think that is a quirky, cloudy issue as to what you're experiencing in silent meditation and whether that is truly experiencing the jhanas as described in the suttas.
Yes, that's the problem. So now we have to break open the sutta and really experience. It's not that difficult, Lama. I can tell you, you can do it at any point in time, even while working, even with your eyes open. So you don't have to be sitting and closing your eyes and doing that. So let's understand what is jhana. It is based upon a word. Jhana as such means maintaining a particular state, just like we are maintaining a state. So now let's say I'm on the work, I'm working on something important, and I maintain that state, that level of concentration or awareness or focus. So let's say I'm writing something or I'm designing something, I'm retaining that. There's everything else goes away, meaning there's no background, right? So there's no background noise, there's no thing happening. Even though outside everything is happening. So when we look into the jhana, what we're trying to do is to defocus and focus on something else. So what to defocus and what to focus? That is the question. Defocusing on the sensual and focusing on Dhamma. To see how this is created, how this mirage is created. Okay, that's the whole idea of doing it. So for that, I need to penetrate into dukkha, which is the pain. So if I were able to penetrate into the pain, then it becomes very easy for me to see what is happening. So there are two ways of doing it. One way is that I get into samatha. Sama is equal, tha is to stay. So first what I'm going to do is, if my mind is fully agitated, let's say I've come from work and my mind is filled with the work related, and no matter what I sit or do, whatever it is, even if I take a shower, I couldn't retain that. I cannot leave it because it's been so intense discussions that even if I were to sit and see something or even have a cup of coffee, I'm really in that way of thinking. Now I need to bring another one to cut this. One approach, easy approach, is that you watch the breath. Now I'll say that, oh my goodness, I am not able to sit and you're asking me to watch the breath. And then what you need to do is you need to do some other thing like the gatha or something. It's nothing to do with Pali. You can do it in English. Or something which will break the barrier of whatever I'm thinking right now. So that is called as the thinking. What I'm having currently is vitakka. What I need to do is savitakka, which is adding a different one than what I'm thinking. Now when I do that, that thought will no longer be there. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm hearing to the song 500 miles away from home. I really love what I can say, country music or Alabama. Let's say I'm listening and I'm listening and listening. I'm driving and enjoying it. And then when I come home and I want to forget all about it and I want to sit in the jhana, it's not going to happen. Because when I sit, I'm going to listen to 500 miles away from home. For sure. Because it is going around in my mind. So what should I do? Replace that with something else. So what should I replace? Bring a Dhamma object and replace it. So there is one thing called as Etan Santan Etan Panitan. Okay, what it really does is that this is in Girimananda Sutta. In that sutta, he talks about what's the best thing. And he says that there are two best things. One is or a profound thing. So he says that Etan Santan Etan Panitan Yadidam Sabba Sankhara Samato, like that it goes. So one is on Viraga, one is Nirodha. So if I were to combine both of them, and this is what I would do, Lama, is that first time maybe I don't know how to recite in Pali, forget about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it in English. This is peaceful. What is peaceful? So now I contemplate what should be peaceful. I cannot get into peace if I am having the rupa, that is the form, the feeling, the perception, and the willful thinking and the consciousness about that. So if I see something, like I'm now seeing this speaker, this mic, what it is made out of? It's made out of material. There's no mic in that. It's called as microphone, but it's really made out of either metal or it's a plastic. There's nothing else other than that. So I keep on watching it. After some time, it breaks. What breaks? Not the mic breaks, but that thinking on, this is a beautiful mic. It's from Rode and it is beautiful. It is having C-type connector and I bought it and so nice and all that will go away. Instead, what I'm watching here is that it is made out of a metal object. So then the Vedana, the feeling is changed. Right here, right now, my feeling is changed. Because now when I see this, I see the defect in that. Because all along, I'm trying to play with this sound. It keeps on increasing, decreasing. So now I see that this is conditioned object. So it's not without condition. So when I look at the feeling, then the third one happens is perception. So my perception gets changed. I get into anicca nature, not the nicca nature. That is, it keeps on diminishing, whatever I do. So in the morning when I was doing a recording, it was coming very well. It didn't have echo. Now, from the last 1 hour, every few minutes I am changing the number to a lower one. It is automatically increasing. And then I have to again reduce. Again it is increasing. Again I have to reduce. I don't know what's wrong, but that's what I'm doing while I'm talking here. But I cannot get frustrated. There's no point in getting frustrated about it. So I have to do what I'm planning to do about this. Then when I do that, the perception changes. So my actions are involuntary. Goes into voluntarily just doing what is supposed to be done. There's no willful action. It's just action. So now if I have to change the sound which is coming, I need to keep on doing it till I finish this session and then fix it tomorrow or something like that. But I need to be doing it. And the vijnana, the sixth sense door vijnana, I'm not taking it too personally now. That this thing which I've bought and it's supposed to be doing very well and I'm configuring it, it's not working properly, I'm not getting anywhere. So I don't feel upset at it at all. So when I do that, what really happens is that the previous thoughts which were there are no longer there. That is, the 500 miles away from home is not there. Instead, I'm totally involved with how to set this guy up. And now this is set up. So that thought are gone. So vitakka vichara is gone. Now, since all of those I have dropped, the mind feels the peace, which is piti. So you really feel joy, basically. And when you feel joy, that is the second jhana you entered into. So that two jhanas, the first one is to change the subject, and the second one is to really get into the joy feeling, is sufficient enough to see what's happening. The dukkha is reduced, the pain is reduced. So now you can compare with the six senses. What you can do is, with the second jhana, that is, you have now seen the joy coming out of it, you can see that if there was a sight and it was giving you the pleasure, you compare with this, you find that this pleasure is more lasting than the sight, than the sound, than the taste, than the touch, than the smell, and then the thoughts, because the thoughts are gone. So you will exactly feel the relief coming out of it. Okay. Now if I want to extend what I can do, I can get into anicca. That is the next step. Then what happens? You get sukha. Sukha in the sense you get the actual pleasure without conditions. So you will be so happy that you don't require anything to be happy. So how do I test it out? So somebody gives me $1 million US. Let's say nobody has given me till date, but somebody gives me, let's say, and I wouldn't really know what to do with that because it doesn't cater anything to me versus the happiness what I'm getting right now. So I genuinely feel happy. And that is what in every sutta, if you looked at the jhanic ones, he says that this is what the noble ones call as the real happiness. That's what he says, because you don't like anything. You don't like anything that is sensually driven, because it has limitation. And from then, you can go to the upekha, which is equanimity. So you are not hating something, you are not loving something. So both love and hate is removed. So that is the way to jhana. So first thing is that while I'm driving back home, I'm in so many different mindsets and thinking and all that. So if I were to sit in one place and meditate, it's not going to happen. So I can even go to a lawn or to a park or on the road or wherever. I just go on a walk and then just watch what's happening. Take some Dhamma, and that's sufficient. It will automatically pull you there. It will close what you are looking at. Meaning the worldly thing has to go away and this has to take over. Because then you can compare between this and that. There's one sutta, Lama, that where one guy comes and asks that, tell me, is there no pleasure at all in the sensual as I think? And Buddha says, no, I never said that. There is. Then he says that, and what about these jhanas? Then he says that, look, this jhana which you are going to do are far better than the sensual pleasure. And then he says that, then what happens? Then he says, when you enter the second jhana, you will find that the first jhana is not that better than the second one. And it is far better than the sensual. And then what happens? Then he says that the third jhana is even more profound and better than the first and the second jhana and the sensual. You will forget all about sensuality. Then he asks what then happens. He says that the fourth jhana is profound, most profound, because it is pure. And no other can match it. Then he asks, after that what happens? He says that now you go into the arupa jhana, so the rupa itself is gone. That means there is no form. You get into formless realms, which is even more peaceful than the form realms. Then he talks about the fifth and the sixth and the seventh and the eighth. And then he says, then after that what happens? He says that there is cheto vimukti, release of heart. Then he asks what happens then. He says that there is neither perception nor feelings. And that ends the whole thing. So then he asks, what should I do to get into that? Direct question. And he says, just observe what you're doing. If you're going beyond sensual, you pull the mind from the senses and get into this and compare. Which is better? That is better, this is better. So you be in the first jhana and see what is happening. And you automatically will drop the sensual when you get this first. So isn't it drug addiction then? What's the difference between this and that? In this, including LSD and all that, what I need to do is to keep on supplying it. So I become a supplier. Whereas here, there is no supplier. It's always there. So that's the difference.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. What we can do is that tomorrow we can do this jhana. And you can see it for yourself. We can do 3 jhanas, first, second, third. Because 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, that would take long time. So we can at least attempt first 2 jhanas, and if it is possible, we can attempt the third one. So tomorrow when we meet, we can really take that up instead of anything else, and we can do that together, all of us being there. And then after that, we can discuss how it went.
That sounds great. Thank you.
No worries. So we can do it tomorrow then. Okay, so shall we end for today then, if there is no questions? Anything you want to add, delete, modify?
Namo Buddhaya, sir.
Namo Buddhaya, yeah, Kalpana. Go ahead. Okay, she left. Okay.
Well, not really. I have nothing to add right now.
Okay.
I'm just trying to contemplate on this now.
Okay.
If anything comes up, certainly get back to you.
Okay. Richard, you have anything?
No, I'm okay.
Okay, no problem. Bhavesh?
Namo Buddhaya, sir.
Namo Buddhaya.
I had the question about that sphere. I've told you that 1 sphere and 300 spheres.
That I thought you got an answer.
No.
Okay. That was a question.
Yes.
Okay, so the Vijnana. So yesterday we went through that Chitta to Vijnana, right? So when you have Vijnana, you are in Nama and Rupa. So what happens here is that we have the name, whatever. So the Vilas is the name. And the form is created of Vilas. Even though there is no Vilas as a form, the form is created as Vilas. Now, since it has no knowledge, Vijnana is no knowledge. So it keeps on identifying itself and getting into trouble. So the consciousness with the 6 senses keeps on identifying itself and keeps on getting into the trouble. And when it gets into trouble, it's like somebody taking a spear and hitting. So it gets into new life, taking the pain. Right now also we are doing the same, meaning as Vijnana, what we are doing. And what Lama was asking about jhana. So who wants jhana? It is the consciousness only wants jhana. There's nobody else who is asking for jhana. So when we say, I feel peace, who is feeling peace? It's the Vijnana which is feeling peace, nobody else. But the mind is letting go of feeling and perception, and hence the consciousness becomes pure. Okay. So now why the spear example is given is because it does the same mistake again and again and again. It keeps on recognizing the objects.
All right. Yes.
Okay. That is, morning, I recognize all the objects. Oh, this is my wife, this is my son, this is my daughter, this is my house, this is my dad, this is my dad, or all that. Afternoon, again, it does the same thing. Oh, this is my house, and this is my wife, and this is my husband, and this is that. And in the evening, again, it does the same thing. Even though none of them is true.
Right.
Correct. And that's equivalent to hitting spear and still he is alive.
Yeah, that's right. And the same thing, I was on that only. I was not understanding that 1 sphere and 300 sphere. What does it mean? But now I got it. Yes. Hey, 1 sphere also does that the same thing, and 300 sphere are also doing the same thing.
Exactly. So
Till, the whole day.
Yes. One time, 100 spear shots are given to that person. Right? And the king asked, is he dead? And these servants go and say that, no, sir, he is not dead. He is still alive. Give him another 100 more in the afternoon. Still he doesn't die. Give another 100 more. Still he doesn't die. So now you see this fun. I don't have a wife. Actually, neither she had a husband. Before marriage, there was nobody there like husband and a wife. Unfortunately, after marriage, I start to believe I have a wife. And no matter how much I try, saying that she's not my wife, the moment I see her, oh, she's my wife, which is like spear shot.
Yes.
Take and hit. Oh my God. Oh, again, hey, she's my wife. Again, get hit. Because ultimately, I'm going to lose my wife. And she's going to lose her husband. And we both are going to lose the child. Either he will get married and he will go away to his own place where he thinks he should be spending his time with his family. Then what happens to both of us? We have lost the child. Right? Now, if I die first and she dies first, the game over. So look at the sorrow that's going to come. It's like the spear shot, right? Oh man, oh. That's exactly what the feeling would be when I lose the wife and she loses the husband. And I lose the job. Everything is same. When I was young, there was no wife. I was 100% sure about it. I never had a wife. And none of us had a wife when we were young. We never had a children. We never had an office. We only had school. When we were infant, even the school was not there. And this is the spear shot.
Right.
So, we all are getting hit every day. And the same objects hit you all the time. Not a different object. At least different object hitting it is okay. The same object. I'm telling you, if she opens this door and she comes, I'm going to feel, there comes my wife. It's like a spear shot. How many times have I told you that there is no wife? Till the mind says, please,
Yeah.
it's a wife.
True, sir. True. Very true, sir.
Right? So it's going to be like that. No matter how much Dhamma we know, but I feel there's a wife. I feel there's a wife. I feel there's a wife.
Yeah. The moment we just see and we get into it.
Yes, the moment there's no even a gap there. She just opens this door and she'll say that, why don't you sleep? And immediately, I don't take her to be human being. I take her to be my wife. But actually, she's just a human being. There's never a wife. But am I able to see it? If I can see it, then I become anagami. Otherwise, end up being sotapanna. That means I'll again be born in human realm. That's all. There's nothing like something very great is going to happen. What I've done is that because that I have not done any bad papa kamma or bad deeds, the rebirth is going to be there as a human. Which is consciousness again, ready for spear shot.
Yes, sir.
Come, I'll give it to you. So again, from the day one.
Right, very right.
And you see this fun is that we don't even know what the eye is going to bring, what the ear is going to bring, what the nose is going to bring, what the tongue is going to bring, what the body is going to bring, and what the mind is going to bring. But consciousness has to suffer. That is the one which is suffering. Nobody else is suffering. I'm telling you, nobody is taking pain. The consciousness is taking pain for all of us. Only when the anatta happens, that pain is gone. I am relieved. I don't know what animal was there with me. Now it is gone. It's a monkey on the back. You can't throw the monkey because monkey is part of you. So you have to keep on carrying the monkey on the back, and the monkey will say, "Get me that." Get it? Okay, take it. No, I'm not happy with this. You get me that. Okay, take it. So that's what it is. And that's the reason Buddha says the vijnana is the one which extinguishes. Okay.
True. Yes, sir. Yes.
Fine then. So let's end for today, and tomorrow we meet with jhana.
Sure, sir.
Okay. Namo Buddhaya then.
Namo Buddhaya. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Namo Buddhaya.
Namo Buddhaya.